So thank you for your attention. Quiet, so welcome. Please keep filing into the room. Make yourselves comfortable for what is sure to be a very fascinating conversation about these out of the stage of taking. Dear ISU, SSP participants, dear students joining us from local courses, including the recent DRB Space Challenge. We have the champions of their challenge here with us tonight. It's really quite an honor. And dear space enthusiasts of all types, you are in the right place. We are delighted to be here at the esteemed Columbia University America campus in friendly Ansan in beautiful. I am Virginia Woodring. I am the Chief Academic Officer of International Space University and a professor of human performance in space. I'm also an ISS researcher for some time, but I stay on the ground when I do my experiments. For years now, astronauts like these have been my colleagues at work and my neighbors, and even in some cases, my experimental subjects. It's okay, tonight we're just gonna talk.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
I'm not your guinea pig.
So welcome everyone to our International Astronaut panel. You've heard about ISU and Three Eyes education. International is really an important feature for us. What you've in SSP have been learning so far, you've been seeing that every space mission is indeed quite international. So people from different countries come together, they train for their missions, they learn what jobs they're going to do, they work together for years, even before they fly. Then on their missions, they're living and working together without political boundaries, getting a common task done, getting the work done together. We have with us this evening three absolutely amazing people, each of whom is extraordinarily accomplished on Earth. Each also went to space to perform the work of an astronaut for their country and all humankind. This evening, they are generous with their time and energy and willing to share their experiences and wisdom with us here tonight. Welcome, panelists. First, I'd like to introduce Dr. So-Yin Yi, South Korean astronaut and biotechnologist with multiple publications in the biomedical literature on technology for the analysis of blood and DNA and some other things that I am really interested in. She is a veteran of a Soyuz mission that included 8 days on the ISS, studying fruit fly behavior, plant growth, spaceflight-associated fluid shifting, among other things. There were many things you did in a short time. Upon her return, she attended ISU. Mm-hmm. How many people here are ISU students? How many people here just returned from a space mission? Aw, see? She continued her career as a researcher and earned an MBA. And she's now an educator and very active in outreach with young people in particular. Next we have Dr. Jeffrey Hoffman, former NASA astronaut and current MIT professor of aeronautics and astronautics. He has a PhD in astrophysics and is an expert in X-ray astronomy that allows a very in-depth analysis of our universe. He's the veteran of 5 space shuttle flights, including the first mission to conduct repairs on the Hubble Space Telescope. Jeff is a devoted educator. He's active with students for decades now, training the next generation of advanced astronomers, engineers, astronauts. And rounding out our panel, we have Robert Thirsk, who had bachelor's training in engineering, and then, as a natural next step, became a medical doctor, and followed that up with an MBA. He was a Canadian Space Agency astronaut, and I understand we have a few Canadians in our audience tonight. He was on the ISS for 204 days. It was Expedition 21. He's an expert on the effects of spaceflight on the human body from multiple perspectives in his case, as a physician, as a biomedical researcher, and as a human being who actually experienced it. So, thank you all for joining us tonight. We really appreciate this. And I'd like to turn things over to Soyoon first for a few remarks.
Okay, yeah. So nice to meet you, everyone. Even under such grizzling and hot and humid weather, you made it here and to come to the astronaut panel, especially students from outside of the campus and people from the outside of the Hanyang University. And before talking about any space-related thing, I'm so happy and honored to bring my ISU program to my home country, Korea. And then really, really happy to do that because for almost 15 years, I really want to bring this in Korea, but I couldn't do it. But thanks to the incredible ISU team and COPST, so finally we made it, and hopefully you all enjoyed the SSP time in Hanyang University. And frankly speaking, this is summer weather. It's not a typical Korean summer. It's very extraordinary to me. Even as a Korean, it's really hard. But not only climates and weather, but also your energies and your passions and your enthusiasms are really hot and really grizzling about the space. So I'm so happy to be a lecturer here and panel here, and that would be really wonderful. But before talking about anything, you can see this, we are all same humankind, not especially born or something. But only thing we have a common is we did our best wherever we are, whatever we do, and we always love the science and peoples and everything. So hopefully we can talk about that, our passion, more after this, during this panel and after. Yeah, again, thank you so much for coming here.
And Jeff?
I thought you were going to ask us questions.
Let's have remarks from each of us.
Well, I often get asked, I'm a professor. I spend all of my professional life during the year teaching. Why do I come to ISU every summer? And the reason is because this is a very different environment. First of all, I get to talk about things that I normally don't lecture about at MIT, and it's a very different student body. So for me, it's kind of, being on vacation. And I've been, I'm old enough. I've been with ISU. My first experience was back in 1993. ISU was meeting at the Marshall Space Flight Center in Alabama, and I was training for the Hubble repair mission, which you all heard about in my lecture a week ago. And it turned out back then the head of physics, Dr. Giovanni Fazio, was one of the founding faculty of ISU, was also my thesis advisor. And I found out, Giovanni's in Huntsville, so I called him. Hey, Giovanni, I'm here. I'm training for Hubble. You're here with this new International Space University. It was only a few years old at that time. And he said, yeah, well, Jeff, come give us a talk. So I gave a talk about what we were planning to do on the Hubble repair, and they actually came, watched us in the water tank. And I guess they liked my lectures because they invited me to come back the next year when we were in Barcelona, and I actually talked about what we did, which pretty much turned up to be the same lecture because we did what we were planning to do. And I've been coming back pretty much every year since. I've missed a few years for various reasons, but it's always fun, and I've certainly enjoyed the opportunity to talk with quite a lot of you students. I wish I had had a chance to meet personally with every single one of you, but it's always a pleasure, and I'm glad I'm back and look forward to coming back in future years.
Thank you, Jeff. And a few remarks, Bob?
You know, I reiterate what So Young and Jeff just said as well, and I really enjoy coming to SSP every year. And the reason for it is you. It's so good to immerse myself amongst what I call amongst kindred spirits. So I see you all as being very talented in whatever your background educational path was. You're very passionate about space flight, and you're very committed and determined. So when I leave here at the end of my week here, I feel like the world is in good hands. Interacting with you this week, I had several people come up and ask how it came about that I became an astronaut and had the opportunity to fly in space. And you know, I think a lot of luck was involved. As I mentioned the other day, I lived in a special era where when the human spaceflight program was born, and I saw that, I witnessed that. We had world leaders at that time with a global perspective who said, you know, we do things not because they're easy, but because they're hard, because that spurs on the best of our energies and our skills. And that was inspiring to me. So growing up amongst that kind of inspiring world events was very helpful to me. But I also had great parents who were encouraging, and also great teachers and professors. If you were to ask my childhood friends today if there's anything special about me when I was growing up, they'd probably say no. If you ask some of the other neighborhood adults if there's anything special about me, they'd probably say no. You're just one of the kids running around the neighborhood. But I think if you ask my teachers and my professors, they probably would have said yes. And I think the reason for that is what I see amongst you, and that's a sense of curiosity. You just can't learn enough about a particular subject, and I was like that in school. So I think I was a bit of a challenge for my teachers to keep me satisfied. And when I went to visit museums, my friends would go through the museum in 30 minutes. It would take me 3 hours to get through, because I'd read every single sentence of text about all the exhibits there. And then, as you heard earlier this week, I did, I don't want to exaggerate this thing about luck. You know, you make your own luck, and I made my own luck as well. For the Canadians here, we know Wayne Gretzky, a famous Canadian hockey player, who said that you don't skate to where the puck is, you skate to where it's going. And I think I had a little bit of that as well, and it ended up with me having the opportunity to fly on 2 very satisfying flights.
Very insightful, Bob. Thank you. I'm going to ask you a practical question now. If you were going to start packing now for a trip to Mars, what 3 things you would take?
That's a fanciful question. Okay, the key word I heard you say is Mars. So first of all, when I did my flights in low Earth orbit, I thought about what I should pack, and I remember packing a book, and I remember packing a DVD. And on both my flights, I did not look at the book, I did not look at the movie, because whenever I had free time, I was always had my head at the window, looking down this beautiful, beautiful planet down below. Just the view of the Earth out of the window is awe-inspiring, and it also makes you very reflective about what society and civilization really is all about. So, to answer Virginia's question about a mission to Mars, we're not going to have the view out the window of Earth. After a couple days, it'll be gone. So maybe I think I'd bring along a telescope, and maybe just try to look at some of the wonders out there in the inner solar system with the telescope. I think that would be great. I would obviously miss my family, and I'd miss you. So hopefully by then we would, holographic images, it would exist, so we could do that. And that's 2 things. Third thing on a Mars trip, I didn't spend enough time journaling. There's so many stories to tell about spaceflight, and I should have journaled more. So I'd bring along a book and journal.
Okay, good answers. Good answers. I like them. Jeff, we've been talking a little bit about science fiction at SSP so far. Of the science fiction movies that you've seen, the space movies you've seen, which one is the most accurate?
First of all, my favorite science fiction movie was and still is 2001.
Yeah.
Because it has not just the science fiction, but the speculative aspect towards the end of the future of humanity, the ultimate evolution. And actually, for its time, it was incredibly accurate, what they did. I mean, probably The Martian has been the most accurate as far as science fiction. Although even there, as I explain to my students when we talk about aerodynamic drag, there is no way that a windstorm on Mars is going to blow over a rocket. But as you know, ultimately it's a movie, and you got to do something to you know. Andy Weir said, "I needed something to make them get off Mars in a hurry so that we could get the story going." So yeah, I mean, that was certainly the most accurate. The least accurate, Gravity, probably. I mean, it was visually, and I actually spoke with the guy who was responsible for the special effects, and before I could even start talking, he said, "I don't want to hear anything about how inaccurate that was. We decided at the very beginning we weren't going to pay any attention to the laws of physics. We just wanted to make a visually beautiful movie," which they did. I will tell you something, though, about Gravity. When I got out of my spacesuit, I was wearing a full, you know, liquid cooling garment from, you know, my neck all the way down to my foot. When Sandra Bullock got out of her spacesuit, she was wearing little, you know, skimpy T-shirt and bikini shorts. That was definitely a little bit of inaccuracy, but at that point, who cared?
So Bob mentioned what family and friends thought of you when you were small, and that makes me wonder. Soyun, what did your family think of you deciding to become an astronaut? What did your mom think?
Oh yeah, that's really a good question, because a lot of Korean kids, when I had a public speaking, they give me a really tricky question. Did your mom agree you to go to the space? Yeah. And it's really tricky, because they knew that every single mom doesn't like the dangerous thing their kids do. Yeah. So, because the reason why it's tricky is they already knew it. All moms doesn't like it. But they want to check it out if I lie or not. And then if I lie, like, yeah, my mom likes it, then astronaut lying about her mom. So it's really tricky. Yeah, and first of all, when I applied for an astronaut selection, my mom didn't know that, because it was a secret to my family. Because my mom looking forward to the time I will get the real job after my graduate school. But it takes a really long time to finish my PhD. And so I don't want her to know I'm totally distracted by the total out of PhD program thing. And when I became a 30 out of 36,000, cannot help it, she got to know. But it was interesting, she told me like I knew it, because she think I might apply for that, because she knew me very well. But from that day, she prayed every day for me to be a backup. And 6 months before my launch, I really assigned as a backup. So my mom called me. At the time, I feel a little bit depressed because I became a backup rather than a primary. And she just proudly say, "God listened to me more than you." And a month before the launch, I became a primary out of the backup. And my mom called me, "Oh my God, God listened to you more than me." Yeah, so my mom really, really worried about it. And first of all, when I packed to go to the Russia, because Russia was not a familiar country from Korea, my mom still called Russia as a Soviet, because when she grew up, that country was the Soviet Union, full of the communists, and then my mom feels so scared about it. And she started worrying about me. And finally became a primary. She feels so scared. And on that launch day, she came to the Baikonur to see my rocket launch. That was my mom's first ever abroad trip in her life. And she would never watched a sci-fi movie. She would never known about the rocket. So even if we had a successful launch, only because of the ground is shaking, sounds is incredible, and huge fires and flames going on, my mom thought it's the explosion rather than the launch, and she fell down. And a medic should run to her, and takes us several minutes, she wake up again. And at that time, I feel a little bit embarrassed, so after coming back from the space flight, my flight sergeant told me, your mom fell down right after your launch. And I said, Mom, how can you do that? You are the mom of an astronaut. And then my mom told me, you should have exactly same daughter like you. Then you will understand me. So that's my mom's reaction.
She sounds like a very typical mother.
Yeah, right.
Yes. All right. So thank you for sharing that, all of you. I'd like to invite the audience to begin asking questions. We've got some folks who will carry microphones around, including the ones in our hand.
Okay.
Because they are portable.
So my question is, after you've seen the Earth from up there, how did it change your perspective on humanity, on life here?
Well, the view of the Earth from space is awe-inspiring, but it really helped me understand how we're all an ecosystem down here. So when you look out the window enough, you begin to see how integrated the land, the ocean, the freshwater cycle, the flora and the fauna are all one, and they're all interconnected. And there's nothing that happens on this planet that doesn't have a repercussion elsewhere. So for example, forest fires in Siberia, you can see that smoky pall rise up into the atmosphere and then be transported all the way across the Pacific Ocean and impact the quality of air that people are breathing in the United States. Or you can see a small tropical depression begin in the South Atlantic and slowly migrate up and become a Category 4 hurricane in the Gulf and wreak havoc there for the people that live there. And then where I live, half a continent away, send up the price of gas overnight by 30 cents a liter. So you can really begin to understand how we're all one and that we're all connected. So certainly before flight, you know, I had an interest in affairs in my community, in my neighborhood, in my city, and I still do today, but I think even more so today after having flown in space and understanding what we can do when we collaborate as international spacefaring nations to do mighty things in space, to do the hard stuff, not the easy stuff, and to see how we're a world without borders and we're all connected. I'm more interested today in overpopulation, poverty, inequality, environmental damage. Those are the things that drive me today.
You know, on my first flight, the very first day of the flight, we were up there for a week. The very first day, we saw a big dust storm that had blown off the Sahara and was moving out over the Atlantic Ocean. And I landed a week later, and of course I had left my car parked, and there was dust on it. It was that dust that had blown off the Sahara, which was pretty cool. I mean, we could all talk for hours about our thoughts about the Earth seen from space. I just want to maybe talk about one thing which is a common misconception. You will often hear people, and I've heard fellow astronauts say this, that there's no such thing as boundaries when you look at the Earth from space. And that's a beautiful poetic thought. And perhaps a few hundred years ago it might have been true. But in fact, as you fly around the world, you do see national boundaries. The different agricultural practices on different sides of borders, you see a lot of these straight lines. So, you know, you do realize that there are, despite the fact that, you know, on the one hand, we get this view of the Earth as a whole and that we all share the same planet, and that, of course, is a critical thing to appreciate. But in fact, we have divided the Earth up into all these individual countries, and you can call it artificial, whatever, but you get more of a sense of this when you look at it and you're continually going around. You see it from this cosmic perspective. And also the fact that we're able to see environmental damage that humans have done to our planet, and you see this from a cosmic perspective, it can get pretty scary. And I think that's reason maybe why a lot of astronauts who may not have thought about it beforehand do come back with more of an ecological perspective.
Yeah, so kind of same idea of the Jeff talked about it. I realized that how grateful the Earth it is, because we get everything we need from the Earth for free. Yeah, of course nowadays we even buy water to drink, but anyway, Earth never charged it to us. We just trade each other. Yeah, we never kind of pay back to Earth for the Earth. For air to breathe, and then water to drink, and then food we eat, and kind of all those soil to grow our plants and everything. And then we got everything literally from the earth. But in return, we didn't give to earth a good thing. We more like a destroyable and then destructible to earth. We are very, very bad species on the earth. And then we are very fragile also, because all of the animals, they adapt to the climate, but we change the climate. So whenever we look down to the earth and how small species we are, but how destructible species we are, but in the same time, how grateful the earth it is. So that was thing I've never thought about it before, look down to the earth as a third person's point of view. But when you became a third person, like a soul out of your body, and then look down your body, and then look back all your past and kind of thing, and we astronaut became that kind of moment, make that kind of moment when we up to the space and look down to the earth.
Hi, thank you for being here first. During this day of age, I think there's a lot of political things going on, a lot of environmental things going on, addiction to social media. So I find myself easily scared of our future on our pale blue dot. So I wanted to ask any or all of you, how do you stay hopeful for our future?
I sometimes ask myself the same question. I mean, I'm an optimist by nature, and so I like to think that things will turn out for the better. On the other hand, I know enough about history to know history goes in cycles. There have been some very bad times in the history of humanity, and there have been some very good times. And as I say, you can be an optimist, you can be a pessimist. I guess maybe it's because I'd rather be an optimist because it makes you feel better. Whether that's more realistic in these current days, you know, the Earth is getting hotter. There is climate change. The sea level is rising. I really wonder, you know, we talk about all the problems with migration now. What's going to happen when 500 million people from Bangladesh no longer have a country to live in? I mean, there's going to be some serious problems which I don't think I'll actually see, but you or your children are going to have to deal with. Kind of hard sometimes to be an optimist in that situation, but maybe I'm just hard-headed and I still like to think that sooner or later we're going to figure it out and solve our problems. I hope so.
I do find the people associated with the space program to be a majority, to be optimists, to be positive thinking, to be passionate about humanity, to be passionate about the future of our world. So one thing I do is I try to surround myself with you and these other kinds of people as well. Maybe one other thing that I will mention is that you've probably all seen the Venn diagram where there's a circle that says about the issues out there that really matter. So the political issues, the economic issues, the social issues, et cetera. And then the other circle that intersects with the first circle is what can I do about it? What are my abilities? And where those two circles come together, that's the zone where you should be taking action, where you should be doing something. You can't, on your own, you can't, take care of all those big geopolitical problems out there. But there's some small things that you can do, and you should be acting in those areas. And as you get older, become professional, finish SSP, that circle, things that I can do something about, that gets bigger and bigger all the time. So just reflect every once in a while and figure out what's that tiny zone where I can be having an impact, and make sure you're moving and being active there.
I totally agree with you. It's really hard to be hopeful, and then it's harder to be positive. But I think that's the normal, because whatever good thing, it's not easy. So you know what? To go to the good school, you should study hard. That's the hard thing, not the easy thing. Any kind of school, anyone accept, and then you can get the admission letter anyhow, and whoever who applied, and you can get the admission letter you are not interested in, only because the certain number of the people can get the admission letter you are interested in that school, because you are chosen and you are capable. So my theory is, if something is really hard, it means it's really good. So being positive is hard, but it's a good thing. We really want to get something better, and we should do our best. I think worst thing ever is a give up or indifferent, because if you give up, you fueled the better people. If you indifferent, you really fueled the person who make things worse, because we should let them know we are watching them. Even if we are not strong enough or powerful enough, we are writing the history, and we are watching them, and we can be powerful enough as a unite and be one huge group. So I'm strongly recommend, don't give up whatever things happen, because there is so many things that we can do. Even if it doesn't work right away, it takes some time. And then don't give up to talk to your friends and debate with your friends, even if you have a different idea. Some people are totally kind of misunderstood, and then if you have a different opinion, you became an enemy of somebody. It's not. We just have a different idea. So we need to share each other, try to understand other people's side, and try to understand each other, and what is the background reason make them act like that and behavior like that. So best thing ever is don't give up. And then please find any fun thing and enjoyable things in your small little life, because I write journal every night before going to the bed, and then it's easy to list the 10 things to be grateful. Have air to breathe, wonderful AC you have under this climate, because some of the kids doesn't have AC at all, even if even worse weather, yeah. And yeah, my phone is a little bit broken, but still working. It's also grateful. So we should practice and make a habit to celebrate little thing and grateful for little thing, and then make ourselves positive. That's the incredible energy to fight against some bad or some not good direction people like that. So let's be hopeful even if it's hard.
Yeah, I just want to say something. I mean, we tend to get a lot of these philosophical questions, and somehow or other, you know, you think that because we're astronauts that we somehow have answers to all of these things. No, I mean, we don't. We have had the opportunity, obviously, to see our planet from a interesting perspective, but, you know, kind of ask us some questions about space flight, because that's something we really are experts on. We don't know all the answers to the problems of the world, but we do know about space flight.
Hello. For your respective space agencies, do astronaut selections focus more on individual merit or on filling specific skill gaps in the agency? For example, would a strong engineering candidate be passed over if there are already many engineers in the Corps?
I've been on a couple of astronaut selection panels, and I can say yes to both of the above. The most important thing is an individual, the adaptability, because, you know, when you become an astronaut, you're asked to do a whole lot of different things, and so we're looking for people who have shown an adaptability, the ability to learn new skills. But on the other hand, there are, you know, we do look and see. I remember at one point we knew we were going to be flying a bunch of animals on a few Space Lab flights. We had a candidate who was very well qualified, as many other people were, but this person happened to be a veterinarian. And so we figured, hey, you know, we don't have any veterinarians in the astronaut corps. He can really help with how are we going to deal with all these animals in space, and he got selected. And similarly, yeah, we have got some people who have these scientific skills, but we didn't have an oceanographer. So yeah, we'll take that. But on the other hand, in my astronaut selection, I was in the first group of shuttle astronauts. We had 15 pilots and 20 mission specialists, and of those mission specialists, 4 of us were astronomers. They certainly did not need a whole lot of astronomers just because of our astronomical backgrounds, but we got selected because, you know, of other qualifications. So it's really a little bit of both of what you're asking there. I suspect that's probably true in other agencies, but I'll let you talk to that, Bob.
No, I won't add anything. That's pretty accurate for Canada as well.
And I suspect that's been the case in Europe as well, from what I know of the European astronaut selections.
All of you are wonderful speakers, and it seems to me like sharing your story is an important part of your job as an astronaut after returning to Earth. Has that been your experience? And if so, did you account for that when signing up to be an astronaut?
Yeah, communication. Yes, I think, you know, 95% of an astronaut's job is technical and operational. We have to have the abilities to be able to succeed in spaceflight to do some of these technical tasks. But we're also unofficially ambassadors for the space program as well, which means that, undeservedly so probably, astronauts are the highest visible elements of the space program. Those are the people that the media likes to ask questions about. Those are the people who can inspire school children. Those are the people who the public likes to meet with and understand how their taxpayers are being well invested in the space program. So yes, when I was recruited many years ago, in addition to interviews and medical exams, we were also asked to give, I can't remember, 5 or 10 minute speeches on something related to the space program as well. So we did have a very basic level of communication ability when we were recruited, and certainly as we visited the schools more and met with the public more occasions and lectured at universities, our skills increased.
Yeah, and as I say, being on astronaut selection panels, one of the things we would always discuss after an interview of the finalists, of the candidates, is this somebody that we would like to be representing NASA to the public? Because as Bob says, the astronauts are the most public face of the space program.
I think it's not only for the astronaut. Every single job, whatever field you are, whatever title you have, what kind of project you are in, communication skills are essence. Because if you are kind of genius, gifted researcher or scientist, if you don't have a good communication skill to impress other people, you never get the grant. Yeah. And if you are kind of lawyer or attorneys or judge or prosecutor, same. You should convince some people. And businessmen, of course, there is no doubt. You should have a good communication skill. So based on my background, like not only as an engineer, but also a manager and entrepreneurs and business development person, sometimes educator, all kinds of job, and then communication is the really, really important. And as an astronaut, not only for the public speaking, but also we should communicate with the MCC and instructors and the mission designers and PI who give us the experiment. We needed to let them know what we didn't understand yet or what we cannot do it in the space and how we can improve our project better. It's all under the communication. So it doesn't only matter with an astronaut. Wherever you go, you need to have a good communication skill, make your job better, and then make your things done under the effective way and in better way, I think.
So a bit more of a lighthearted question, especially to Professor Hoffman, since you have been on astronaut selection panels before. If you were to apply today as your younger self, would you choose yourself in the selection?
Absolutely. I had the right stuff then.
How about me?
No, of course, it has become extremely competitive. It always has been. And I was always, when we got into the astronaut corps, I remember talking to some of the older astronauts who had been there since the Apollo program, and I was surprised how many of them said, hey, we look at all of you bright young people coming in, and I realize if I were planning to be an astronaut now, I wouldn't have a chance. It's all relative. So, yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that I still would have a good chance of getting selected, but it was highly competitive then, and it's even more competitive now.
Which one? Anyone who wants to just choose.
Well, thank you. I'm really pleased to be here, and I have some questions because we're preparing for the contest, designing an experiment to do with the lunar shelter, and I'm really interested in astrobiology things. And when I'm studying those fields, I sometimes question myself because is it really right for us, the human beings, to go to space? Because we cannot expect the outcomes of exploring the outer space by our hands-on experience. So I want to hear about your thoughts. Thank you.
Sometimes it's quite debating even in my brain, actually, even in my head. Sometimes I think definitely we should go, we should explore. And then most of the time in my research and development time, no matter how good device monitoring it, give me the data, I really want to see with my own bare eyes what's going on and how's it going on, and push my head under the hood, even if I know it's dangerous. So we human is kind of like that. So we really want to bring something to the space and then want to check it out, how it's going and what's going on. But sometimes I feel a little bit careful because what if all universe is kind of like Earth. So as we destroy the Earth climate and Earth ecosystem, and we are very harmful species on the Earth, then should we spread these kind of harmful things even outside of the Earth? And that's my question sometimes. And then what if something over on the moon, even if we didn't found yet? Or what if something on the Mars, even if we didn't know what ecosystem over there? So definitely I'm so pro to go to the exploration, but also in the same time, I think we needed to be careful and polite species over the universe, not the kind of harmful or aggressive species. And we'd better check it out if we do for the goodwill or not. And then we really greedy to do something, and then all those kind of checking out and diagnosis by ourselves is really necessary, I think.
Hi, here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
after, yeah.
International Space Station or space shuttles are often considered as the place where everyone can collaborate together beyond boundaries and the countries. So my question is, do you have any specific moment or the memories when you feel international collaboration is essential?
I flew aboard the International Space Station, and I can remember an exact moment when what you described occurred, because we talked about it at the end of the day. So it was a moment where 3 of us were in the US lab operating the Canadian robotic arm to grapple a Japanese cargo vehicle and berth it on the bottom side of a European module, while the station was under the command of a Russian cosmonaut. So I thought that was pretty cool. So that's a really visible example, but you know, everything that we did aboard the space station is international. I would spend my day not doing Canadian experiments. I do American and Russian and Japanese and European experiments, and it wasn't always the Canadian that was operating the robot arm. Sometimes it was a European or a Japanese operating a robot arm. I think that's a really good metaphor for how we hope that the world in other sectors outside of space would operate as well.
All right, thank you for the opportunity for us to be here. Since we are here due to the corporate sponsor challenge, and ISU is more of a national student thing, and building upon Dr. Drog's points about astronauts being an ambassador from their respective countries, my question would be how you feel about the new generation of private astronauts who are not representing the countries, but for corporations such as SpaceX or Axiom Space. And I want you to know if you guys feel comfortable about that, or you think the job of astronaut should be in the hands of nations. Thank you.
Well, there's actually 2 parts to the question, because there's, first of all, a lot of people ask me what do I think of all the commercial space companies that are being involved. I'm very enthusiastic about it. I mean, look at all the innovation that this has led to. The reusability of rockets, things that NASA left to itself would not have developed. So it's, we're in a very exciting time in the development of space. As far as, the commercial astronauts, my parents told me that in the early days, back in the 1930s, when they first started flying airplanes over the Atlantic Ocean, it was incredibly expensive. It would cost maybe, in 1930s dollars, $10,000 to fly across the Atlantic Ocean, and only a very few people could afford it. And that certainly is the situation now with commercial spaceflight. The hope is that as technology improves and we maybe get some more competition, that gradually the cost of access of space will continue to come down, and it will become accessible to more and more people. Whether that will happen, how long it will take, I don't know, but that certainly is the hope that someday the cost of getting to space will be a lot more affordable and that more people will be able to take advantage of it. I certainly hope that that's the case.
I think diversity is always the key of the creativity, I guess, because if anything belong to the one specific group, we just stuck over there. We cannot have an innovation idea, and we cannot get out of it, I believe. So not only aeronautics and airplane also, it was belong to the military, and everybody think it's just natural, and then not that many people think about that could be the commercial, but it became a commercial and it make our life easier. And all the space program also, even before became government program, long time ago, it was under only military programs. Even not long ago, in several countries, they have a space program only under the military. But they realized that it should be diversified to make more application, to make more creative idea. So they open to the public and then open to the civilian, and then they make better output. So I think for this human space flight and all other commercial space and make an incredible innovation, as Jeff said. So I'm so looking forward. And also we had a really, really hard time under some diplomatic restriction, so we cannot have a real collaboration, global collaboration, because the space program is only under the government. But if that is under the commercial, because always business will and business ambition always cross the border and then put their factory in an enemy country easily to make more profit as a company. And sometimes that greedy moment makes a peaceful moment out of some interesting proposal. So this commercial era, I believe, very diversified idea of the space flight. So I'm so huge fan of it as far as they are ethical and moral.
Hello, thank you all so much for being here. You've all spoken about seeing the Earth from up there. I was wondering how the rest of space looks like. Is there any significant difference from viewing the rest of space, like the moons and the stars from up there? Thank you.
Well, I'm an astronomer by training, so I was really interested in what it looks like looking at the stars. And one of the problems you have is that, when the lights are on inside the cockpit, the reflection off the windows, you can't actually see the stars. And I knew that was going to be the case. So I actually designed the old-fashioned photographer's hood, these big black capes. So I designed it so that you could actually Velcro it to the window and then put your body in it, and it would be dark, so you could really look up. And the stars don't twinkle when you look at them from space because you're above the atmosphere. You are going around the Earth so fast that you see the northern sky and then the southern sky within a half hour of one another. You fly right through the aurora, and you see these incredible colors outside. I mean, yeah, looking down at the Earth is beautiful, but looking back up at the rest of the universe, for me, was as fascinating. I never got tired of looking at the Earth, but I never got tired of looking up either.
Hi, Rob. My question is to Rob. Rob, you have flown both Soyuz and Space Shuttle. How do you compare both the spacecrafts?
So, the first couple of minutes aboard the Space Shuttle are pretty bumpy, as Jeff mentioned during his lecture earlier today.
Pretty bumpy doesn't describe it. It's overwhelmingly, they're shaking the hell out of you.
So I had put a checklist on the wall right in front of me, a checklist that if we had to do an emergency bailout, I had all the instructions right there. But it was so bumpy that it was moving like this. So I couldn't read it. So I thought that was pretty funny. And then after 2 minutes, the solid rocket boosters are jettisoned, and then we fly the rest of the way up to orbit on the power from the 3 main engines. And things got very quiet then. It got very smooth, like you're riding in a Rolls Royce or a Cadillac. In fact, I sort of thought that we had lost our engines because things got so quiet. But then I started.
We used to call it electric drive at that point because it's so smooth.
Yeah. But then I heard the calls, the nominal calls come in my earpiece, so I knew that everything was okay. The G's start to build up at that point there, up to a level of 3G. This was my first flight, so I wasn't really used to it, but it feels like there's 3 people sitting on your chest, and your rib cage is being compressed, and it's hard to get enough air into your lungs. So for the last couple of minutes of ascent, all I was thinking about is breathing. So just get enough air into my lungs. And then you reach orbit, and you go from 3 Gs of acceleration down to 0 in a fraction of a second. We're all wearing a 5-point harness, so it's kind of a comical scene because with that deceleration, our arms and our legs are flung forward. And we release our seat harness, and then we get up, and just with a gentle push off the wall, the ceiling, or the floor, you're flying around like Superman or jumping around like Spider-Man. And of course, there's a lot of laughing and yelling and screaming and high fives and hugs and tears of joy because we've just done one of the more dangerous things that human beings do. So that was pretty special. And about 10 years later, I had the opportunity to fly on a Soyuz vehicle. This was like 1970s technology, so I expected it to be a pretty crude voyage. But with liftoff, I didn't even know we had lifted off. It was that smooth. There's no kick in the seat of the pants like there was for the shuttle. And the only reason I knew we'd lifted off is because I could see the clock indicate that we had. But as I described, I think it was yesterday, it's a 3-stage rocket. So you get up to 4 Gs or so, and then in a fraction of a second you go down to 0, and then the Gs start to build up again with the second stage, and then go down to 0. And when at this transition, again, it's kind of comical because you're getting thrown around the inside of the spaceship, and you do this 3 times. And again, when you get to orbit, in the Soyuz vehicle, there's some things you really have to do really quick once you get to orbit. So we didn't have the hilarity like we did on the shuttle, but we all had big goofy grins on our faces.
Really thank you to hear your stories. Actually, I have 5 questions. Can I ask you all of things? Okay. Okay. First, so why do we really need to send people to the moon? Second, what's the big deal we had to do to let people live on the moon for a long time? 3, if you had to pick just one, what's the most important piece of tech we need for people to actually live on the moon? And last thing, a lot of folks wonder if being in space or on the moon makes you age faster. Do you actually feel that, and what's been the most frustrating thing you've dealt with, physically or mentally, because of being in space? Thank you.
I'll take the first question, and you can divvy up the others. Why do we need to send people to the moon? We've had very successful robotic or rover missions to not just the moon, but also to other places in the solar system as well, including Mars, and they have done tremendous jobs. So I'm talking about Curiosity, Perseverance, Sojourner, Opportunity. These have done really good jobs, but their missions are narrowly focused on just scientific return. But there's advantages that human beings have that rovers don't have in terms of dexterity, mobility, ability to make judgment, make decisions when you're working in a gray zone, when you don't have all the information that you'd like to have to make a black and white kind of decision. And then also, it's just the drama of humans going places that we've never been before. And that's what excites me, is when I see explorers going someplace into a frontier. It's not the rover or the automated system that excites me. Maybe the last thing I'll say is that we lost one of the rovers in the last couple of years called Opportunity, and in its 10 or 12-year mission it covered 40 kilometers in its investigations. Well, the Apollo 17 crew, just the one crew, they covered 40 kilometers in 2 days on the moon. So humans have that mobility, that dexterity, that judgment that, someday we'll have an R2-D2 and a C-3PO, but we don't have it today, and it's important for humans to go as well.
I can talk to that with direct experience because I spent 10 years working on the MOXIE experiment. That's the Mars Oxygen ISRU experiment, where we actually had a device which generated oxygen on the surface of Mars by electrolyzing the carbon dioxide from the Mars atmosphere. And this experiment was inside the Perseverance rover. And so I was not doing geology, but I was present at all of the discussions, and I really saw how we run robotic operations on the surface of Mars. And what I realize is, we build these incredible rovers. They do fantastic things, as Bob just said, but we can only use them at a fraction of their potential because, first of all, it takes so much time. We do something, we program the rover to do something. We send up the commands. The next day, the rover goes and does whatever it's supposed to do. And then at the end of the day, it has to send back its state so that we know what it actually did, so that we can make plans for the next day. And it just takes a long time. That's number one. And number two, we can only operate these rovers at a fraction of their potential because we have to operate them so conservatively. Because if the rover gets stuck in the sand, there's nobody to dig it out. If one of the wheels breaks, there's nobody to change the wheel. And, if you as a planetary scientist come up with a new experiment, you have to wait until the next rover is ready to go to Mars, and that may be 10 years in the future. My dream is not, I don't talk about humans versus robots. Should we be exploring with humans or robots? What I really see as the future of planetary exploration is when we can finally have humans and robots operating in the same environment. Because then, just think, you can joystick your rover and have it go much faster than we ever can do when we're commanding it from Earth. And we can operate it a lot more aggressively because if it does get stuck in the sand, we can go and dig it out. And if something breaks, we can fix it. And if you design the rover properly so that you can actually interchange experiments, and you as a planetary scientist come up with a new experiment, you can send it with the next resupply mission, and we can take out the old experiment, put in the new one. I mean, that's what made the Hubble telescope so valuable, that we could actually service it with human beings. And that's the future that I would like to see with humans and robots working together, where we will have a synergy so that both humans and robots will be able to do a lot more than either could do separately. That's my vision for the future of humans and robots. Okay.
Hello. First, I want to say that I'm very happy to be here to hear all your amazing stories. And because I'm very curious, I would like to know what is, how did you feel in the moment of your very first flight, the moment exactly before the flight when you were like all in the capsule, in the rocket, and you started to hear the countdown, and you started to hear like 3, 2, 1, and then ready to go. What were your thinking in that moment?
You know, I remember driving out to the launch pad and looking up at this big, huge rocket. And I realized, you know, some people are maybe worried about the potential danger, but frankly, that is not the time when you're on your way out to the launch pad to be asking yourself, do I really want to do this? No, I mean, I made that decision when I was 6 years old, and that's what was really going through my mind. Oh man, and in fact, one of my best friends from when I was 6 and 7 years old, we used to, you know, we watched science fiction movies and we used to play space cadets, you know, shooting each other with ray guns. And he told me later, he said, I couldn't believe it. You know, Jeff, we used to play when we were 6 years old, we used to play space cadet, and now I'm coming and watching my best friend actually going into space. And that was what was going through my mind. You know, I had dreamed of going into space since I was a little boy, and it's hard to believe I'm actually going to sit on top of a rocket now and actually do it. That's what was going through my mind.
I had a really interesting moment. Maybe I talked with the SSP participant several days ago. As I told you, we had a problem right before the launch. So we didn't know if we really will be launched or not because my commander, Sergei Volkov's spacesuit has broken a little bit. And then MCC cannot make a decision if it is good to go or not. And then they want us to hold for a while. And at the time, 3 of us looking at each other a little bit sadly because I was a backup and became a primary. So I thought like I will not never fly, but finally I'm here. And my engineer, Oleg Kononenko, he trained for the shuttle mission, but anyhow, some diplomatic problems and kind of like that, and then canceled and getting back to the Russia. And he should have started all the way from the Soyuz training and then finally came to the Soyuz rocket to be launched. And Sergei Volkov, my commander, he assigned for a flight 10 years before as the youngest Russian astronaut ever, but because of the budget constraint and Russian Roscosmos cut into the 2 crew rather than the 3 crew. So even on our own mission patch, he has his name, but his name was erased awkwardly. So when we see that mission patch, there should be some name, but it was gone. So we all 3 has some kind of story. We almost couldn't go to the space, but right now we face on the spacesuit problem, and then we don't know if we will go again or not. And we're looking at each other, and I know we all say something in our brain. Maybe are we the destined not to go to the space? Maybe we are not the person meant to be not to go. And it is a very sentimental and an interesting moment, even if it's just a several seconds. And then finally, mission control said that you guys are good to go because we checked the pressure several times and then seems like it's okay enough to go. And then we will send a new spacesuit for the Sergei Volkov with the Progress cargo module, and then he will come down with a new one just in case. And then we all yelling so loud, and then we cannot think of any other things that we are really going. So it was a really exciting moment. It was really, really exciting moment. We don't have any time to doubt ourselves after that. Yeah. How about you? You were first. Mission.
So similarly, when my crewmates and I drove out to the launch pad on the morning of our launch, our space shuttle was being fueled with cryogenic fuels at that time. And it causes a lot of creaking and groaning on the metals and the joints and things like that. And there were some motors that were starting up. And when I got out of the van and looked up at the shuttle stack, it seemed like a living creature, just as eager to get off the ground as the rest of us were as well. Now, I'd been in the shuttle on several occasions in the previous weeks, but it was unpowered at that time, so it just seemed like a sterile vehicle to me. And now it seemed just as, animated, and it seemed like it wanted to get off the ground as well. All of my crewmates and I, we were all really, really well trained. As I was walking out to the pad, I thought, you know, the training that I've had is pretty good. We can face anything that they can wish to throw at us. So I was pretty confident and very upbeat on the morning of flight. Now, certainly, there are risks associated with spaceflight. And I remember the night before was the last time I saw my wife. So we shared a few words on that topic, and and then we said a final goodbye and hug. And after that moment, it was very positive, focused on the job, and looking forward to it.
I'll just share because I had a kind of a unique experience. I was talking about the feeling before of what it was like, before I got into the shuttle, but the weather was kind of marginal that day, and they were on a launch hold. The way the shuttle works is you count down to T-minus 9 minutes, and then you go into a hold. And so we were holding at 9 minutes, and the weather wasn't really clearing. And so finally we got to the end of the launch window, and we figured launch is scrubbed for today. So I was down on the lower level of the shuttle, so I unstrapped, I climbed up the stairs, I was up top in the flight deck talking with the commander, and what are we going to do? We got to go back. And meanwhile, back in mission control, they were talking, the launch window was dependent on something having to do with the lighting conditions for the satellites that we were launching. And they asked, and the weather had cleared a little bit, and so they asked the satellite company, are you willing to extend the window? And the next thing we knew, start the countdown at 9 minutes, and I was up there on the flight deck, and what the heck, we're going? Oh my God. So I quickly went down, and I had to strap into the seat again, and it was really T-minus 5 minutes before I was all ready to go, and so that was kind of an unusual experience, but we did take off, and we had a good mission.
So when talking about the space, we often discuss such things as having a colony in Mars or on the Moon, or even in planets that are like very far from us. So if back in the days coming back to Earth wasn't an option, or wasn't even possible, or wasn't guaranteed, would you still have taken your flight? And in case that yes, what would you look like the habitat to be like to make you comfortable for a long stay?
I would choose not to fly on that mission. I love Earth too much to not to come back. I'm not ready for that.
The mission I cannot come back, you mean? I would love to wait until they develop the technology to bring me back, I guess. Because if they develop the technology to send, not long after they will figure it out how to bring me back, because I fully trust my rocket scientist friends and rocket engineer friends, and they are incredibly smarter than me, so they will figure it out.
One of my college roommates, when I got selected as an astronaut, told me that he always knew that was something that I was going to do. And I said, well, how did you know? And he went back to a conversation we had back in college, which I had totally forgotten. But apparently back then, he had asked me, because I was an astronomer and interested in the space program, and he had asked me if they could send you to Mars and you could be the first person on Mars, but you might not make it back, would you still do it? And apparently I told him yes. And he said once he heard that, he was not at all surprised when he found out that I had become an astronaut. But I had totally forgotten the conversation. Whether I would still do that now, there's family considerations. I mean, I love my wife, I love my grandchildren, and so on. But boy, if I had a chance to go to Mars, it'd be a hard thing to turn down. Don't tell my wife.
Any other ladies wanted to ask a question?
Hello. Okay, so I have a question about the future of astronautics, as you see it. We had an interesting lecture last week about culture associated with space, and something that prompted my thoughts was how they said that the relationship that commercial space might have with risk could be different in the future to how governmental spaces approached risk in the past. And risk is obviously, as you've mentioned many times in this talk, part and parcel of the whole experience of being an astronaut, you know, embracing risk, coming to terms with it. But do you think that future astronautics will be different due to this different sort of culture, and that it might have a different culture associated with it?
Very hard to predict, but you know, for now, I'd like to think that the companies that are sponsoring commercial spaceflight are paying the same attention to safety that NASA and the other space agencies that have launched people into space have developed. Because, I mean, if the number one thing about human spaceflight is, Dan Golden, who was used to be the head of NASA, he often would ask people, he said, what's the one most important word in human spaceflight? And the answer was safety. Will there someday be accidents in commercial spaceflight? I mean, there have been accidents in government-sponsored spaceflight. We've lost astronauts, we've lost cosmonauts. Someday, we'll have accidents with commercial spaceflight. Will that stop people from wanting to go into space? I don't think so. I mean, we have accidents in commercial aviation from time to time. Safety is supposed to be paramount. We try to make air travel as safe as possible. We do, tragically, sometimes have accidents, but it has not stopped people from flying in airplanes. And I suspect that the desire to go into space is strong enough that we will continue to do that. I hope we'll be able to do it safely, and we have to keep trying to make it as safe as possible. But we have to recognize that there is, I mean, we are harnessing a tremendous amount of energy to get into space. We're pushing materials to their ultimate limits. And someday there may be more accidents, and we're just going to have to deal with it. We'll have to see how that affects commercial flight. I mean, it's, you know, people are paying a lot of money to go on these commercial missions. If they felt that they didn't have a good chance of coming back alive, I think it might change whether, you know, who is willing to do that. But we'll just have to wait and see. I think that the desire to go into space is strong enough that people will continue to do it even in the face of accidents.
Yes, thank you for your presentation and telling experience. I wonder, what was the most uncomfortable thing is ISS, and was there any training that made you think, why am I doing this training?
Yeah, I have a bunch. Most uncomfortable things I have in ISS was motion sickness. Because even if it's an incredible time, very exciting, and I'm flying all over the ISS like a Peter Pan. I can do the flying kick like a Jackie Chan, even if I've never done on the ground, and that's so incredible. But for 3 days, I have a really, really serious motion sickness and headache and back pain, yeah. So I always have a fully filled pocket with a vomit bag. So first day, almost every 15 minutes I vomit, and I hate my doctor told me to eat something because I don't feel like eat anything. But he told me like eating is also part of your mission to take the calorie. I really hate it, but cannot help it, so I did. But it doesn't mean that motion sickness ruined the whole my space flight. Just a part of it, and I think any incredible things, I should pay for it, and then I pay my space flight with the motion sickness kind of thing. So that was the only one thing I feel uncomfortable. Above all other things are so exciting. And the training, I couldn't understand why I'm doing is a rotating chair. And then at the time, I heard European Space Agency doesn't do rotating chair anymore. And a lot of the NASA astronauts looking at me so pity, they said, we don't have to do it, but you should still do it because you are in the Russian program.
I never had to do that.
Yeah. Everybody hate that, right? Yeah. And when I sit on the rotating chair training, they just give me the bucket even before starting. Right here. And then they want me to hold it because it's rotating, it's easy to lose it, so hold it. Oh my God, just a 30 seconds a minute, because they made me rotating my head like that and then chairs like that, so you feel like you are rotating 360 degrees and all different kinds of things like a gyroscope. And still, they said it would help your motion sickness, but it's not. And then scientifically, they never proved that rotating chair improve your motion sickness in the space. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, everybody knows that. So finally, they stopped doing it 5 years later after me or something. Finally, Russians stopped doing it. But those rotating chairs, I did almost once or twice every 3 months or something. And after doing the rotating chair, I cannot do anything for whole day. It ruins my whole day's training. So that was the things I still cannot understand why I did it.
I mean, I was very fortunate. I never had space sickness. I felt great the whole time I was in space. I was excited. The worst part of every one of my space flights was having to come home. As I told you the other day, gravity sucks, and that's the way it goes.
So I was a subject for a circadian rhythm experiment. It's biorhythms. It's the system in your body that tells you when to be awake and when to go to sleep. And one of the parameters they're interested in measuring is called core body temperature. So what's the temperature deep in my body? So the investigator mentioned to us that we were going to swallow a capsule. And in the capsule, there's a thermal transmitter in there that would report our body temperature as it made its way through our gastrointestinal tract. Great. So about a month before launch, the investigator comes to us and says, I'm sorry, but we're having trouble with the capsule and it's not going to work, but we still need the core body temperature. And what we need you to do is to shove a rectal thermometer up your bum and wear this for many days of your flight. So I didn't like that, but
What, in the interest of science?
in the interest of science, I did it. But I shouldn't have, because another problem with these rectal thermometers is they keep falling out. And you have to put them back in. So that was not fun.
So we've had a round of really interesting questions covering a big range of topics. I have one more that I'd like to ask our panel, and it's aimed at our audience, who are mostly students. We have local students, we have students from all over the world here. And some of our students at ISU sometimes feel like we ask them to learn things that seem odd. And I know that you, as you went through your mission training, you all had particular objectives of your missions. You were all on some different vehicles. You had to learn things that might have seemed odd. What was the weirdest thing that you had to learn to become an astronaut?
Well, for me, I was the first generation of astronauts that did not have to be pilots. I had jumped out of airplanes, but I never had bothered to learn to fly them. In fact, some of the airplanes I jumped out of probably were safer to jump out than to land them, but that's another story. But in many ways, spaceflight can be thought of as an extension of high-performance jet aviation, which is why a lot of the early astronauts were test pilots. And they felt that those of us who were not pilots really should learn what it's like flying in high-performance jets. And that's why NASA has a fleet of T-38 jets, which is the supersonic training jets that the US Air Force uses. And so we went through a course in not learning how to fly them, but at least learning how to operate them and be backseat operators, how to deal with the emergencies and everything, but also learning how to do a lot of the acrobatics and basically put yourself in unusual physical conditions. Like I say, I never got sick in space, but boy, did I get sick in doing aileron rolls all day. And so that was for me, the most challenging thing was, as a non-pilot, to learn how to function in the environment of high-performance jet aviation.
What I found out through my space flight is a little bit awkward and interesting is among my 18 different missions, we had a really one interesting scientific experiment to check your puffy face. So every single astronaut, because of the cardiovascular liquid things, and you have a really puffy face when you are in the space. So some of the astronauts likes it because it makes you look younger, and then all the wrinkles away. And some astronaut doesn't like that because it looks your face is bigger. Yeah, and then most of the Asians doesn't like it actually. But it was a very interesting experiment. He would love to check what kind of pattern of the puffy face you have. Either you are upside down for a while, or you eat some salty food at night and sleep, and in space. So he just compared each other. And he had enough number of the data. All three has a different pattern to have a puffy face. So in space, more like your forehead and a nose has more puffier than other part. And when you have a really salty food, you have eyes are really puffy and kind of like that. I cannot remember exactly what he found out, but that founding was so interesting to me. Yeah.
One of the rich aspects of training for an International Space Station expedition is the exposure to international cultures. And I had the privilege of working in Russia for many years, getting ready for my ISS expedition. And the Russians have an approach to whenever we're going to do like a particularly risky or tedious or demanding training task, they'd have us meet individually with their psychiatrist just to make sure that we're in the right mindset and we're ready to take on this, this challenging training session. And so I met this guy and the psychiatrist, and we had a chat, and he interviewed me. And one of the last things he did, he says, "Bob, I have some cards here." And they're just little rectangular cards that with nothing on them, just a color, just red or blue or green or yellow or black. And he said, "Bob, I'm going to give you these cards, just arrange them on the table in front of you." And I said, "Well, how?" He said, "Just how you're feeling, just arrange them in whatever color, in whatever order you want." I said, "Well, what's the goal?" He said, "Just arrange them in whatever order you want." I said, "Okay." So I started laying them down. I had no idea what I was doing, and I finished up with the black one. And it looked good to me. And he said, "Bob, are you sure you want to do this?" And I said, "Well, you didn't tell me what I'm supposed to be doing here." He said, "No, you're just supposed to be doing this according to how you're feeling." So I picked them up again, and I put them down again, and in just random order, and then finished with the green one. And he said, "Bob, are you sure you're ready for this today?" So this is, it's a silly story, and I'm sure the psychiatrist had a reason for doing this. But I didn't understand it, and it's just one of those silly memories that sticks out to me. So it's as I mentioned, it's a really rich humbling experience to be able to train in another culture. It brings you some important life lessons there.
Thank you all. You had us land on some words of wisdom there. We've covered a lot of territory here, and I really want to thank every one of you who asked a question. It's clear that you came prepared, and I love the range of material that we covered today. Some of it lighter, some of it heavier, some of it very personal, some of it very spacey. A nice blend here this evening. I'd like to thank the panelists for their time and their energy. I'd like to thank our student guests who joined us here. Thank you for making the effort to join us. And thank you to all of the SSP folks here, including the staff who helped make this event happen. We really appreciate everyone's interest in space. And we're happy to have all of us here learning more about space together. Thank you all and good night. I'd like to also invite you to join us down on the first floor for a small reception.